On today's Newsmakers, a famous TV host finds Jesus, a look at the Babylon Bee, and one doctor's dire marijuana warning. That and more coming up. Welcome to Newsmakers, a show where we go behind the headlines each week to bring you interviews with pastors, entertainers, politicians, and other notable figures. On today's Newsmakers, we begin with a story of heart change in Hollywood. Julie Chen Moonves is known for hosting Big Brother, but now she's sharing why she's decided to embrace Jesus. Let's welcome Julie to Newsmakers. Julie, this memoir, this audio memoir is really incredible. It's called But First, God. And I have a lot of questions about your story, but I want to start with your decision to put this project together. What led you to it?
Well, when I finally found Jesus in 2018, I had never owned a Bible, and I was gifted one from a friend who was one of my favorite cameramen working in TV news, who became a pastor in Boston. And I found it very daunting and intimidating and very big. And I thought, I'm going to listen to an audio version of the Bible. And the only one I could find was a King James version that sounded like I was, listening to Shakespeare and a very, Shakespearean actor's voice. So I actually called up Simon & Schuster because I had written a children's book that came out in 2018. And I offered them, I said, I would do for free. I would read the new international version of the Bible for free, because then I thought, I'll get through the Bible, if I have to do it.
It's a great way to do it.
Yeah. And they were not interested in that, but they were interested in hearing my faith journey and making that an audio memoir. So I was, surprised that was something that they thought anybody would be interested in. And I said, yeah, I'll do it.
Well, I mean, your story is really incredible. And it's interesting to me because hearing it framed, you went through 48 years of your life ignoring God, essentially, ignoring that part of who you are now. And I think it's so fascinating to consider what that was like. And obviously, being a public figure during a chunk of that time, how would you describe yourself and your outlook on everything before Jesus?
I was so focused on this world, and I didn't acknowledge that there was any other world beyond the world that we live in. And I was very focused on my false idol then, which was work, my career, my job. And that's who I was. And any blessing that came my way, I thought that it was something that I did to earn it and that I deserved it. And it was by my own hard work, or luck. I believed in luck. And I was just never thinking about God.
What was the journey like? Was there an epiphany moment for you? I know there were a series of events that were going on. Was it more of an actual journey? Take us through that shift in perspective.
The journey was like a child, a newborn, learning how to crawl. So it started with me going church shopping, if you will. I went to a few different churches to attend their Sunday service to see what it was like. And I found the right church after a couple of weeks, and it was a Presbyterian. I still go now. It's a Presbyterian church. I found the sermons very easy to understand. And then it started with Bible study classes. It started with YouTube videos from a wonderful Bible teacher, a British preacher by the name of David Pawson. And he breaks down each book of the Bible, and in these 40-minute, classes that he had. And they were recorded in the 90s. And then when the pandemic happened, and a girlfriend of mine sent me, Hope for Each Day by Billy Graham. So I was reading daily devotionals. But the connection was okay, I'd read it, And then I wouldn't think about it the rest of the day. And then I'd move on. And if you asked me the next morning, what did you read yesterday? I wouldn't remember. And I started to pray. And in the beginning, my prayer sounded like a Dear Santa letter, like asking for things instead of thanking for things. And then, but I would say really 2 years into it when the pandemic hit and I was at home all day, that's when I had the time to really dedicate to delving into the Word. And it was the weekly Bible study Zoom classes that my friend and his wife, who run a church in Boston, that they invited me to, that I started attending every week, and I could ask questions, and I could always text them with questions because, I was a newbie. And it was during that pandemic time, and my mom had moved in with us for 6 months because we had just lost my dad unexpectedly. And my mom and I studying the Word together, having, a partner to do that with. That's when I really started to understand who God is and who I am and why I am here and how He has blessed me my whole life while I was ignoring Him and given me the jobs I've had, the platforms, the career, so that I could get to where I am today, to use any and every platform, being a public figure and declaring Jesus my Lord and Savior. One of the big things I learned is if you do not declare publicly, who He is to you and what He has done for you, why should He go before God the Father when, it's my time is up here on earth? So I have to stand, firm and say it loud and say it proud, what He has done for me and who He is. And that's not the most, Hollywood is not the most inviting space for that.
I love that. I love that. And I think that's the piece that so many people today are desperate for, and they're looking everywhere to find it. And you're here sharing your journey and pointing people toward that. Really appreciate you taking the time today and joining us.
Godspeed. God bless you. Thank you so much for this time together. I really appreciate you.
Moonvez's audio memoir, But First God, is available now wherever books are sold. Up next, Babylon Bee managing editor Joel Berry joins us to talk comedy, gender, and more. This is Newsmakers on the CBN News Channel. We'll be right back. Welcome back to Newsmakers on the CBN News Channel. Our next guest is one of the minds behind Christian parody site, the Babylon Bee. Joel Berry joins us today to discuss the Bee's popularity as well as his new book, The Babylon Bee Guide to Gender. Let's welcome Joel to the show. So Joel, you have a new book. It's coming out and it's called, I'm just going to read the title and then I'm going to ask you a question about the title. It's The Babylon Bee Guide to Gender, the comprehensive handbook to men, women, and the millions of new genders we just made up. The obvious question with that title, do you want to be canceled? Is that your goal here?
Well, the Babylon Bee has managed to find quite a bit of success off of getting canceled again and again. So I'm not saying we're looking for it, but it wouldn't necessarily be a bad thing if we were to get deplatformed by Amazon or something like that.
It always seems to help those books, right?
For us.
Yeah, it always seems to be like the thing that propels a book even more when that happens. But in all seriousness, this is a book obviously taking the typical comedy you guys are known for and taking a serious issue and really driving it home in a different way. Why did you guys choose to tackle this particular topic?
Yeah, well, I guess, first of all, it seemed like a very natural thing for us. This is kind of a joke that the Babylon Bee has been telling for years now. It is a hot button topic in the culture, probably the hot button topic in our culture right now. And what we're arguing about on the surface is really just the surface. I mean, this goes down 20 levels deep into, where our culture has come from and the thinking that has shaped kind of the water that we swim in right now. And it really ultimately goes back to, God, the creator, and Lucifer saying, I will be like the Most High. God, you're not going to define who I am. I'm going to define who I am. And so, we felt like it was an important topic to discuss, but a very easy topic for us to write about, just because it's something we joke about all the time, and it's very funny. I mean, this ideology, or religion, if you will, you could call it a religion, gender ideology, is, you don't have to stretch the truth or exaggerate it that much for it to just be funny on its face. It's that ridiculous. And so what we found is, when we were writing this book and translating it to kind of this satirical format, you can give the straight ideology word for word, and it comes across as satire sometimes.
Yeah, well, it's interesting because you said a lot there about really that struggle between good and evil, right? This is something that's been with us since the beginning of time, and yet you look at Ephesians 6, you look at what the Bible tells us, we're in this struggle. I think a lot of people, though, are a little shocked by this movement in that it has blown up and become such a major thing, right? Brands are engaging in it. It's sort of everywhere. Why do you think it went from being this idea that existed in a very small percentage of people's hearts and minds to something that exploded into the mainstream in the way that it has?
Yeah. I think it on the surface, it seems like it happened so suddenly and that it was sprung upon us so quickly. That's the perception. That's what it feels like. But I think in reality, the groundwork for this has been laid very slowly in the institutions, in our schools, for a very long time. And I just anecdotally, I'm a child of the 90s. I grew up in the 90s. I was born in the 80s. And I just remember all the pop culture that I consumed. I mean, from Disney movies, every kids shows. The message of everything that I consumed as a child was like, follow your heart.
Yeah.
That was it. That's what every Disney movie in the 90s was about, following your heart and like kind of throwing off the shackles of your obligations, or whatever your family says you should be, or what other people say you should be. And like the ultimate, honest existence is to live out your authentic self. That's kind of where, and so I think that people didn't realize that it was going to go here, but that it's kind of, this is where it had to conclude logically. It just it's been going on for longer than people realize.
Yeah, it's interesting because in the process of doing what you guys do at the Bee, you have hit some censorship. You have hit these moments of people coming after you, weird fact checks about things that obviously are comedy. And so with all of that, what is it like to navigate that? Because you guys are constantly churning out funny content. How do you get around that? Do you just not care about that? Are you not concerned with that? I'm sort of curious about maybe what impact that has on your process.
Yeah. Well, it can be frustrating, because we want to tell funny jokes. And when you have to kind of break character and, sue social media companies, or, get the word out to your subscribers that you've been censored from this platform or that platform, it does kind of, it can take some of the fun out of it, but it is so in a sense, we're fighting this battle on two fronts, where we're telling our jokes and we're having fun, but there's a serious side to it that we have to fight. That said, we have gotten a lot of great comedic material out of some of these cancellation attempts. The first kind of volley of this was when Facebook partnered with Snopes, and Snopes came after us and started fact checking our articles. And the fact checks were so ridiculous that we just had so much fun making fun of Snopes. We got a lot of material out of it. So in a sense, it gives us material sometimes, which is nice. But you have to work hard not to lose your sense of humor when you're fighting the battle against the deplatforming. When you see Facebook engagement tank because they've done something in the algorithm that doesn't allow people to see and share your articles, that can be frustrating. But you have to keep good spirits and keep doing what you're doing. I always say that if we get kicked off of all of these social media platforms, we'll go back to print and we'll hire paper boys, and we'll do it that way. We'll never stop doing what we're doing.
Well, I love that, and I appreciate that. And the book is The Babylon Bee Guide to Gender. Grab it wherever books are sold. Thanks for your time today.
Thank you so much for having me.
It's very interesting to get a look behind the curtain at the Babylon Bee. You can grab the Babylon Bee Guide to Gender today wherever you get your books. This is Newsmakers on the CBN News Channel. Welcome back to Newsmakers on the CBN News Channel. For our final segment, we are sitting down with Dr. Raymond Wiggins. Dr. Wiggins has been sounding the alarm on marijuana and its dangers. Let's welcome him to today's show. Doctor, I want to first start by asking you an important question. You have done quite a bit of research. You are an expert on this issue of marijuana, which is becoming a bigger and bigger cultural issue as we speak in this country right now. But what was it that first led you into investigating this issue?
Well, I have 3 close relatives who were all heavy marijuana users, and they're all dead today. And I believe that they would be alive if it wasn't for marijuana. One just died a couple of years ago, one of my cousins, and he died of a sudden heart attack. And he had just stopped. He had just come back to the Lord at that point, and he had just stopped using marijuana, but it had done significant damage to his heart. Then I have another young man who's a very close personal relative who was raised in church, and he went off to college, got in with a group of guys that were smoking marijuana. And he thought, hey, these guys are doing okay, so why not do it? And he did it. And then after a few times, he wound up developing psychosis and paranoid delusions. He actually thought people were trying to kill him. And he wound up in a psychiatric hospital, wasn't able to ever return to school. So that's the personal side. And then if you look at the professional side, I see that my patients have a lot more anxiety whenever they're smoking marijuana. Almost every one of them that checks the box that says marijuana, they also check anxiety. And it's always, it's been interesting to me that people would push it as an anti-anxiety drug, but when studies actually show that it increases anxiety if you look at the best studies. And then also people who are under anesthesia, they take 3 times more propofol. I do lots of anesthetics, outpatient anesthetics every day, and it takes 3 times more propofol. And it's not just me saying that, it's everyone that's in my profession, including the American Society of Anesthesiologists. They say that it takes 3 times more anesthesia to keep these patients appropriately sedated. So if you look at all those things, plus the fact that it takes more post-operative pain medication to keep them comfortable, when I started looking at all those things, I saw the devastating effects in my patients, my family, and my friends. I began investigating, and what I found really shocked me.
Why do you think, you go through, we look at schizophrenia, we look at suicide, we look at bipolar disorder, all of these things that we're seeing come out in this research. Why do you think it's as though people are looking at all of that, looking away and forging on towards legalization, pushing it, repeating that this is not dangerous? It's as though they want to pretend this data isn't there. Why do you think there's such a push to legalize this? Really, I mean, almost about half the country now, it's legal recreationally, and then you throw in the medicinal. Why?
Well, I think there's several reasons. Number one, there's big money behind this. It's somewhere between $100 to $130 billion a year industry. And if you look at the referendums, if you look at the money that's going towards candidates, there's a lot of money that's going that direction. And big marijuana is following the same path that big tobacco did over half a century ago. And they're also making it look like marijuana is really a benign drug, but it's really not. They're pushing the potency too. They keep pushing the potency levels. If you look back at Woodstock in 1969, most marijuana was 1% to 2% THC. THC is the component of marijuana that causes the high. the really good stuff was 3%. If you fast forward to 1995, that was about 4 times that. Today, it's 22%. Well, the higher potency marijuanas are 4 times more likely to make you addicted. So they're pushing the idea that it's not a dangerous drug, that it's a benign drug, yet they're pushing the potency through genetic manipulation. And
they also say it's not addictive. I mean, this has been a repeated line that marijuana is not addictive. But again, as you're stating, that is not accurate or the case.
That's not accurate at all. It's somewhere between 4 to 8 times more addictive whenever you get into the high potency marijuanas, and that's anything over 10%. Well, today the average is 22%, and there's some strains that are pushing 45% these days.
And, my final question for you, and looking at all of this, you have resources, you have a website, there's also a book, Weeding Out the Lies About Marijuana. Where can people go if they're interested after, watching this or hearing this to get more information from you and your research?
Well, you can go to drwiggins.com. That's drwiggins.com. And it has a lot of links there for resources that you can use, including my book. Now, my book is not coming out until January. And so if you'll sign up for the Connection email list there, then I will let you know exactly when the book comes out. And you'll want to read that book. There's so much evidence in there, both from the physical side, the mental health issues, and the spiritual side that will help Christians.
Well, I appreciate you taking the time, coming on, talking with us. This is an important issue, and everybody make sure you head over there, sign up so you can get the info on the book, so when it comes out, you can grab copies of it. Appreciate your time today.
I appreciate you having me. Thank you so much.
This is an issue that's certain to heat up as more states legalize marijuana and as the issue becomes more prevalent in our communities. We'll be back in just a moment with more Newsmakers here on the CBN News Channel. That's all for today's Newsmakers. Thank you for watching, and be sure to head over to the CBN News YouTube channel for the full interviews that you saw on today's episode. We'll see you back here again